Rich man mocks mom and son. Before we continue, please remember to like, share and subscribe. In a warm, bustling cafe nestled on a busy city street, a single mother and her young son sat quietly at a corner table. Their meal was simple, just a small sandwich and a cup of tea, but the love between them filled the space like the soft morning light streaming through the windows. The mother's eyes, tired but gentle, watched her son as he carefully took bites, his small hands clutching the food with care. Life hadn't been easy for them, but in this humble moment, they found comfort in each other's company. The calm, everyday scene shifted subtly as the cafe's door swung open. A wealthy man entered, dressed sharply in an expensive suit, his polished shoes clicking on the wooden floor. His eyes swept across the room with an air of superiority, scanning patrons as if searching for something beneath him. His gaze settled on the mother and son, and a faint, contemptuous smirk curved his lips. He took a seat nearby, but his attention never wavered from the pair. His mocking glance lingered on their worn clothes and modest meal. He whispered a biting comment to his companion, loud enough for the mother and son to hear. The words dripped with disdain, suggesting they were nothing more than failures, unworthy and invisible in a world where money and status reigned supreme. The mother's heart clenched at the harshness, but she refused to let the man's cruelty touch her son. She straightened, offering him a reassuring smile that masked the sting of humiliation. The boy looked up, confusion flickering in his eyes, yet there was a quiet strength in his gaze that spoke of resilience beyond his years. The cafe's other patrons glanced toward the scene, their faces a mixture of discomfort and sympathy. Yet no one spoke, leaving the mother and son to carry the weight of the rich man's scorn alone. But beneath the surface, a silent battle was unfolding, between the arrogance of wealth and the quiet dignity of those who struggle but do not surrender. As the rich man continued to mock, unaware of the impact his words would have, the mother whispered softly to her son, "Never let anyone make you feel small." His lips curled into a small, determined smile. In that moment, their modest table became a symbol of courage and love, standing firm against judgment and cruelty. The wealthy man's laughter faded into the background noise of the cafe, but the quiet power between mother and son lingered. A reminder that true worth is measured not by riches or status, but by the strength of spirit and the bonds we hold dear. Inside the cozy cafe, the gentle hum of conversation and the clinking of cups created a peaceful backdrop to the morning. At a corner table sat a single mother and her young son, quietly sharing a modest meal. Their faces held a calm dignity, shaped by quiet endurance rather than ease. Nearby, a sharply dressed man leaned back in his chair, the gleam of wealth shining through his expensive watch and tailored suit. His eyes locked onto the mother and son, a sneer slowly spreading across his face. With a loud, mocking voice that cut through the cafe's gentle buzz, he began to ridicule them. His words were sharp, cruel jabs at their worn clothes, their humble meal, and the tired but proud way they carried themselves. The other patrons glanced over, shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Some exchanged awkward looks, unsure whether to intervene or stay silent. The rich man's laughter echoed, heavy with arrogance, as he continued to belittle the pair. "Look at them," he scoffed. "Living in the past, wearing yesterday's rags, pretending they belong here." His voice carried the harsh divide between privilege and poverty, exposing a world where cruelty often hides behind wealth's polished surface. The mother's face remained calm, but beneath the composed exterior, her heart ached. She lowered her gaze to protect her son from the sting of the man's scorn. The boy's eyes flickered with confusion, struggling to understand why someone would be so mean. Yet, even in his young face, there was a quiet strength, a resilience that refused to break under the weight of mockery. Despite the harsh words, the mother whispered softly to her son, "Ignore him, love. We know who we are." Her voice, steady and warm, was a shield against the coldness of the rich man's disdain. The boy nodded, drawing courage from her unwavering support. As the mockery continued, the scene became a stark reflection of society's deep divides, where wealth can breed cruelty and judgment, and where those less fortunate often bear the brunt of harsh assumptions. The mother and son's silent endurance stood in quiet rebellion against the sneering voice of privilege. Slowly, the rich man's laughter began to fade, lost in the growing awareness around him. Some cafe patrons averted their eyes, uncomfortable but powerless, others returned to their own conversations, pretending the cruelty didn't belong in their peaceful morning. Yet, amidst the tension and hurt, the mother and son remained steadfast. Their dignity, unshaken by the mockery, spoke volumes about strength, love, and the quiet bravery found in simply existing with grace in a world quick to judge. The rich man's sharp words had momentarily filled the room, but it was the unyielding spirit of the mother and child that lingered, an unspoken testament to the resilience of those who refused to be defined by the cruelty of others. After the rich man's cruel laughter faded into the background, the cafe seemed to close in around the mother and her son. The once gentle hum of chatter felt distant and hollow, as if the world had suddenly grown colder. The boy's eyes, wide with confusion and hurt, searched his mother's face for answers. His small hands trembled slightly as he clutched the worn sleeve of her coat. She pulled him close, wrapping her arms around him like a protective shield. Her voice was soft but steady, a soothing balm against the sting of humiliation. "Don't let his words define you," she whispered, pressing a gentle kiss to his forehead. "People who speak with cruelty do so because they lack understanding." The boy sniffled, leaning into her warmth. He didn't fully grasp the reasons behind the man's harshness, but he trusted his mother's quiet confidence. She wiped away the tears forming at the corners of his eyes, her own heart aching but determined not to show it. This moment was theirs alone, away from the mocking eyes and harsh judgments. She spoke of dignity, not the kind that comes from wealth or status, but the kind that lives deep within. Strength, she told him, isn't about never falling. It's about standing up, even when the world tries to knock you down. Her words painted a picture of courage not as something flashy or loud, but something quiet and steadfast. As they sat together, the boy's tension slowly eased, replaced by a growing sense of hope. He saw the world reflected in his mother's eyes, a place full of challenges, yes, but also full of love and resilience. Their bond, forged through hardship and tenderness, was a sanctuary no amount of scorn could shatter. Around them, the cafe resumed its rhythm. Voices rose and fell, cups clinked softly, and sunlight streamed through the windows, warming the space with gentle light. Yet for the mother and son, time seemed to pause, holding this fragile moment of healing. She whispered again, "No one can take away who you truly are. Never forget that." The boy nodded slowly, a small smile breaking through the shadows of doubt. He felt stronger, not because the world had changed, but because he had learned the power of inner strength and the unbreakable bond of love. Their journey was far from easy, but in that quiet embrace, they found a fortress of resilience. The mother's silent strength became a beacon, guiding them through the storms ahead. And though the world might mock and judge, they would face it together. With courage, with dignity, and with hearts full of hope. The rich man stood alone in the grand hallway of his luxury home, the polished marble floor echoing softly beneath his expensive shoes. His footsteps slowed as he reached a tall, ornate mirror framed in gold. For a moment, he just stared at his reflection, the sharp suit, the confident posture, the carefully groomed appearance. Yet behind the surface, something flickered. A hesitation, a doubt that he rarely allowed himself to acknowledge. The bravado that had propelled him through boardrooms and social events seemed to dissolve in this quiet, empty space. His gaze shifted from the flawless exterior to the tired eyes that stared back. Those eyes held stories no one ever saw, a loneliness born of relentless ambition and a world where power was the only currency that mattered. Memories of the cafe flooded in. The mother's steady calm, the boy's confused but unbroken spirit, the sting of his own cruel laughter that had silenced the room. At first, his words had felt like an assertion of superiority, a way to remind himself of the distance he believed separated him from them. But now, in this solitude, that distance seemed less certain, more fragile. He thought about the simplicity of their bond, the strength in the mother's quiet defiance. Something shifted inside him, a quiet ache of regret mixed with a new awareness. Had he been so consumed by wealth and status that he'd forgotten the value of kindness? Of seeing people for who they truly are, beyond the labels society slaps on them? This wasn't just a fleeting pang of guilt, it was a reckoning. The emptiness behind his arrogance echoed louder than any applause he had ever received. For the first time, he questioned what he had been chasing all along. Power, influence, material success, none of it filled the hollow space he now felt deep within. In the mirror, the man's expression softened. The mask of superiority slipped just enough to reveal a man grappling with his own flaws. A man realizing that true strength might lie not in mockery or domination, but in humility and understanding. This moment of self-reflection marked the beginning of a new path. He wasn't yet sure how to make amends or if forgiveness would come easily. But one thing was clear, he wanted to change. To be more than the rich man who mocked a mother and her son. To see people, really see them, and maybe, in doing so, finally find something that money could never buy. As he turned away from the mirror, his steps felt lighter, less certain but more sincere. The journey ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, he was ready to face it, not as a man defined by his wealth, but as someone willing to open his heart to change. A few days after the harsh words echoed through the café, the mother and her son found themselves walking through the park, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the winding paths. The air was crisp with the promise of early autumn, leaves crunching softly beneath their feet as they made their way home, the son's small hand securely clasped in his mother's. Unbeknownst to them, the rich man, still unsettled by the reflection that had lingered in his mind, had come to the park seeking solitude, trying to make sense of the stirrings inside him. His expensive coat barely shielded him from the cool breeze, but he hardly noticed. His thoughts were tangled in doubt and regret. As fate would have it, their paths crossed near a quiet bench beneath a sprawling oak tree. The mother and son stopped briefly, sharing a moment of laughter, their warmth contrasting the man's cold isolation. For a moment, the rich man hesitated, his breath catching in his throat. The urge to look away warred with a deeper impulse to bridge the gap his cruelty had carved. Slowly, cautiously, he stepped forward, his approach tentative but deliberate. The mother glanced up, surprise flickering across her face, while the son's eyes widened in quiet curiosity. Neither moved to retreat, instead, an invisible tension hung between them, equal parts apprehension and possibility. I wanted to say something, the rich man began, his voice unsteady but sincere. The other day, at the café, I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. It was wrong. The mother studied him carefully, searching for any sign of insincerity. Instead, she found something unfamiliar, a vulnerability, a crack in the armor of arrogance. Her son squeezed her hand gently, sensing the gravity of the moment. You don't have to explain, she replied quietly, a calm strength in her tone. Words can hurt, but people can change. For the first time, the rich man allowed himself to imagine a different way forward, one where judgment gave way to understanding, and division softened into connection. He looked down at the boy, who now smiled shyly, and felt a pang of something long buried, hope. The moment stretched between them, fragile yet charged with potential. No promises were made, no grand gestures offered. Just a quiet acknowledgement that this unexpected encounter might be the first step toward healing. As the sun dipped lower, casting a golden glow on the three figures, the rich man turned to leave, but not before offering a small, genuine smile. The mother and son watched him go, their hearts lighter, knowing that sometimes, the most profound changes begin with a simple act of courage. This chance meeting marked the turning point in a story once defined by mockery and pain. A reminder that even in the darkest moments, the possibility for empathy and redemption remains alive, waiting to be embraced. The community center buzzed quietly with the low hum of everyday life, children's laughter echoing softly from the playroom, the smell of fresh paint lingering in the air, and the gentle murmur of conversations weaving through the halls. It was here, amid worn wooden tables and mismatched chairs, that the rich man found himself sitting across from the mother and her young son. The atmosphere was far removed from the luxury he was used to, yet something about this humble space felt profoundly real. He listened intently as the mother spoke, her voice steady but filled with the weight of years spent struggling to provide for her son. She spoke not of bitterness or resentment but of hope. Hope for a better future, for kindness that transcended money, and for a world where her son could grow without the sting of judgment. Her words peeled back the layers of pretense he had wrapped himself in for so long. He realized how much he had missed, not just in the lives of others but within himself. The facade of wealth had often been a barrier, distancing him from genuine connection. Now, in this modest room, the walls between their worlds began to crumble. The boy, wide-eyed and unguarded, chimed in with innocent honesty. He talked about his dreams and simple joys, his questions coming straight from the heart. The rich man found himself captivated by the child's sincerity, something no amount of money could buy. There was no judgment in the boy's eyes, only curiosity and trust. For a moment, time seemed to slow. The man felt empathy wash over him, not the kind born from pity but from true understanding. Here was a family whose resilience and love transcended circumstance, a family that had taught him more about strength than any boardroom ever could. Their conversation moved beyond words to a shared recognition of something deeper, that despite their different backgrounds, they were connected by a common humanity. The rich man realized that real wealth was not counted in currency but in kindness, compassion, and the courage to change. As the afternoon light filtered through the windows, casting a warm glow across their faces, a new story began to take shape, one of healing and hope, where past wounds could be mended and new beginnings embraced. He reached out, gently taking the boy's hand, a silent promise that this encounter was just the start of something meaningful. The mother smiled, gratitude shining in her eyes, knowing that bridges had been built. Not just between two lives, but between worlds that had once seemed irreconcilable. In that small community center, beneath the hum of everyday life, a profound transformation had begun. The rich man, the mother, and her son were no longer strangers divided by circumstance but allies united by empathy. Together, they were rewriting their story, one where respect replaced ridicule, and connection triumphed over division. The grand hall was alive with murmurs and soft footsteps, filled with an expectant crowd dressed in their finest attire. It was a public event, one of prestige and influence, a world the mother and her son had only glimpsed from a distance before. Tonight, however, they were not just guests, they were part of a story about change and humanity that was about to unfold. The rich man, once known for his arrogance and biting words, stood at the podium. His usual confident smirk was replaced by a solemn expression, one shaped by reflection and newfound understanding. The room quieted as he called the mother and her son to join him on stage. The mother's heart pounded with a mix of disbelief and cautious hope. Her son clung to her hand, eyes wide but steady. As they stepped forward, the rich man's gaze met theirs, not with condescension, but with genuine respect. "I want to take a moment," he began, voice clear and earnest, "to acknowledge two people who have taught me more about courage and dignity than I ever could have imagined." His words hung in the air, the weight of past mistakes balanced by a sincere apology. He spoke of his earlier cruelty, of how his wealth had blinded him to the true value of character and kindness. But more than that, he recognized the strength of a mother's love and a child's resilience, things no amount of money could buy. The audience watched, some moved to tears, as the rich man presented them with a token of honor, a simple but meaningful gift symbolizing respect and admiration. It was a public gesture of redemption, a turning point that marked the end of mockery and the beginning of honor. The mother smiled, a warmth spreading through her that no harsh word or judgment had ever extinguished. Her son's face lit up with a shy, hopeful grin. In that moment, the walls that once divided their worlds crumbled, replaced by a bridge built on empathy and mutual respect. Cameras flashed, capturing the scene that would soon inspire many beyond the room's walls. It was more than just a ceremony, it was a powerful reminder that people can change, that kindness can triumph over prejudice, and that true wealth lies in understanding and respect. As the applause rose around them, the rich man stepped back, letting the mother and son take the spotlight, not as symbols of pity, but as champions of resilience and humanity. The video closes on this transformative scene, leaving viewers with a profound message. that redemption is possible when arrogance gives way to humility, and that every act of kindness can rewrite a story once marked by cruelty. In that moment, honor replaced mockery, and respect triumphed over scorn, reminding us all of the power of growth and the lasting impact of compassion. If you enjoyed the story, please remember to like, share and subscribe. Thank you.